fleeting, knowledge fades away, but we rise together with Sensay today, capturing wisdom from hearts that inspire, building a future, lifting us higher. We're the dreamers, the seekers, the bold, turning stories to wisdom, forever to hold. Sensay, oh Sensay, we're transforming the night, knowledge to wisdom, with AI shining light. Together we soar, with our hearts unified. Sensay forever, our wisdom won't hide. From the spark of a mind to a legacy grand, we preserve every lesson across every land. With replicas of living, our voices will stay, empowering progress in every new day. We're the builders, the vision, the flame, carrying forward the wisdom we claim. Sensay, oh Sensay, we're transforming the night, knowledge to wisdom, with AI shining light. Together we soar, with our hearts unified. Sensay forever, our wisdom won't hide.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Welcome to this week's Sensay Community Call. I'm Dan Thomson, the founder and CEO at Sensay. It's great to do these once a week and get a chance to interact with community members, some of our teams, some of our advisors, bring them on and talk about what we've been up to, and also just about the Web3 AI industry in general and what we're building here at Sensay. If anyone is listening on either YouTube or LinkedIn or Twitter, if you have any questions, please do add the comments. We will read them and address them towards the end of the call. You can also reach out on Discord and Telegram during the call, and we will bring up some questions as we go along. So without any further ado, for those who are new to Sensay, Sensay is a company where we create digital twins, lifelike digital twins of people, as essentially perfect personal assistants of them. Imagine having a second you. Imagine having a version of you that can do everything you can do, as a way of extending yourself, as a way of helping you to interact in different languages, different time zones when you're asleep, or helping you to draft content for your social media, draft your emails, and help with messaging, or as just a way of capturing your knowledge about your work life, your job, your that sort of tacit knowledge that just to make available to the rest of your team when you're not. And beyond that, even if you were to leave a company, making sure that knowledge is still available for them to continue operating at their best ability. Today, joining us, we've got three guests today, which is, I know we're growing quite a lot. So as always, we've got Lars, who David Bird is one of our advisors, and from our team, we have Adam. I guess we can go for a quick round of introductions, I guess starting with Lars.
Well, hello, everybody. It's great to see you all again this evening. At this time, I don't feel I need much introduction anymore. I'm head of community for Sensay, and I'm sitting in the chats with all of you and everybody has any questions at any time. And I'm very happy today that we have two guests with us here on the community call, because it is actually showing what we have coming into us. So let's go over to Adam. Adam, welcome to the community call.
Thank you. Hello. So just a short introduction. I'm the full stack tech lead at Sensay. I oversee the development regarding everything regarding the website sensay.io, as well as the widget which we are developing. And I've been at Sensay since last July, and it's been great ride. I really love this team. and it's super fun working for Sensay. So yeah, very nice to meet you all.
We are very happy
David.
to have you with us, Adam. We really are. And today we also have David Burden with us today.
Yeah, hi.
Please.
My name is David Burden. I've been developing chatbots for getting on for 30 years, mainly through my own company, Data Limited. Done projects for UK government, UK military, also into the public and private sectors, and started getting involved with Dan and Sensay about 6 months ago.
That's very great.
I like how Lars, you actually managed to, when you said like, oh, let's go to Adam, and you literally looked over and it was, exactly the direction that your camera would be to look at him.
Well, the funny thing is my screen is in that direction, actually.
It was a nice coincidence. I guess we'll just we'll start with some questions for Adam, really. Adam, I guess maybe we can go a bit more into your just, I guess, a bit of your background and how. And then you said you started since July last year. What were you working on before? And then I guess what have you been working on that we've pushed out in development in Sensay over the last sort of 9 months, I guess, well, 10 months now.
Yeah, sure. So I come from Slovakia, currently live in Czech Republic, right next door, and 28 currently. I've been working as a developer since I was like 18, I think. I did high school, which was focused on programming, and then I went to college, but I kind of didn't like school very much, so I really pushed myself to start working as soon as possible. And I found a job at a startup at like I guess 18 or 19 years old, and I've been kind of working at startups ever since. I'm not a big fan of corporates, or at least in my mind, I prefer working at startups because it's more relaxed, and I feel like I'm able to learn more and do multiple things and not be kind of stuck in one line or in one lane. And so for the last 9 or so months, I've been working mostly on things around the website, developing for example, the agent integration, which is the interactive avatar that you can see, for example, on the investors page or in the chat with Denbot. Working on for example, the voice feature integration with 11 Labs, and currently we are working a lot on the chat widget. So making it available for users and companies which use our product to embed their replicas into their websites, and and we're currently adding more features to the widget, enabling users to customize it and making it look nicer, which is coming very soon.
For sure.
And that's kind of, I guess, what's on my head.
Yeah, I mean, you've been, one of our sort of like team leads for quite a while now, and pretty intrinsic to the development and what we've been doing for the last 6-9 months. So it's been, it's been quite an experience. Even in that time, we've seen quite a lot of different development. But I guess in your background, you've had quite a multidisciplinary, obviously full stack developer, so you can do quite a lot of different things. But I guess what people wouldn't hear from that is also you've gone from software engineering to a bit of front end, a bit of back end, but also things like blockchain development, and now obviously working a lot with AI. I guess for any of the sort of developers out there, what's been the kind of like key to adapting to those different technologies and learning and then implementing for you, because your approach is quite multidisciplinary.
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's been always about motivation or excitement. So, when blockchain started to be a popular thing, I was like excited about it, and I was like, I want to work in that industry. So I managed to get a couple of different jobs along the years in blockchain industry, and that was interesting. And now in the recent years, obviously AI is huge, and I feel very fortunate that I was once again able to kind of get into this industry relatively quickly and work in it. So that's super fun for me. And also, like the front end and back end thing, it's kind of similar. Like I started on the back end doing PHP, and yeah, and after some time I started to be more excited by front end, so I kind of moved into that. And yeah, just kind of keep going to things that I find interesting and exciting.
Amazing. And how, as a developer, how has AI changed the way that you work now? I mean, are there specific tools that you like to use, or little like tips or secrets that you have? How much involvement is AI in your work as a developer now?
Yeah. So for development, I use Cursor, which is a code editor which has AI deeply integrated into it, and you are able to prompt the AI directly from the code editor, and it can make changes directly in the files which you are working on. Um, and yeah, it's been very interesting. I use it a lot, and it's a lot of help for some menial tasks, some refactoring, and yeah, it's kind of a different mindset when you are trying, for example, to do a lot of changes with AI. Like you have to learn to prompt it correctly and not have it not give it too many information at once, kind of go in steps, and then also craft the system prompts, let's say, well, and cycle different ones based on what you currently want the AI to do. Um, and yeah, it's a learning path. Like I also like to sometimes work on my little small personal projects and just go full on just AI, and I'm trying to not type any code on my own and just purely talk to the AI and try to make the code as best as possible. Yeah, it's kind of a learning journey, but I think that's what we kind of have to do as developers if we want to stay relevant in the future, as AI becomes increasingly involved in everything.
Yeah, there's been, I guess, a lot of talk recently, about a vibe coding and the ability for sort of non-technical founders to even go and create entire websites and apps, using things like Bolt or Replit or Lovable. But then they find that the AI, has limits, right? Before, you do need some kind of experience to be able to fix the bugs and actually, work with it to, make things better. How do you think that's going to adapt? Do you think AI will, get to a point where it just can do everything? How soon, do you see that kind of advancement happening from a development standpoint?
Yeah, I think it is going that way. Like as you said, currently the AI is limited and it cannot just do everything immediately. You have to kind of learn to control it and to prompt it well. But I think as time goes on, it will be smarter and smarter, and you will be able to just give it simpler and simpler commands. Um, and yeah, sorry, what was the other part of the question? I forgot something.
Just kind of like where you see it going, like, whether it'll be able to do everything for everyone, or if some kind of experience is still needed, or just what you see like the future of sort of AI development becoming.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it's a good question. I heard opinions that everybody will kind of become managers. So we won't do much of like manual programming, and we will just I don't know, just have to tell the AI what to do. But I don't know how it will work on the large scale, like millions of people just being managers. Like it's a very interesting, I don't know, question.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've heard that people will become more like project based, right? And I guess the kind of like QA type roles where you're giving that sort of human feedback on what you're actually looking for and that creativity that maybe AI can simulate, but not necessarily actually activate. And yeah, so it's obviously no one really knows what's going to happen in a few years. If you asked anyone 5 years ago where we'd be now, probably all the predictions were wrong. Definitely 10 years ago. So
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, if I just, I wanted to say that it was like not even 2 years, was it? I remember when ChatGPT 3.5 dropped, and I remember in the video they showed, oh look, like it can make a HTML page and it just put a button in there or something. It made like
yeah,
a simple box with a button, and I was like, whoa, like that's crazy. And like
I
it's been like a couple of months, and now it can do a whole website, and it's even
yeah,
looks good in some cases. Like
yeah.
in another 2 years, it's going to be crazy, I think.
I remember this really well because it was November in 2022 when it came out. So it's 2.5 years ago now. So time flies. But I remember exactly where I was. I was in Cape Town, South Africa, and the second it came out, I literally phoned up every single one of my friends saying, like, you need to learn this right now because this is going to change everything that we do. So get ahead of your industry and do this. Well, look, I mean that's a good kind of segue into our other guest today, which is David. I guess one last question for you, Adam, before we do move over to David is, do you think AI will take your job?
I hope not. I'm trying to work with it as much as possible so that it doesn't. But I will have to evolve. I think everybody will have to evolve their skill set to stay relevant.
I definitely think my job will go first. So, I'm quite looking forward to it. We've got obviously David here. So David, we have a interesting sort of background between us as well. Like, uh, I guess I've mentioned this to a few people, but probably not too publicly, but David's book titled Virtual Humans was actually one of the books I did when I was one of the books I used as research when I was originally writing my books. Not that I would call them anywhere near the same quality or in-depth worth of research, but David's Virtual Humans book is a great read for anyone who would like to sort of get into the sort of history of where this technology has been coming from and some of the thought processes pre sort of the generative AI craze. So yeah, David, welcome. Maybe you want to give a bit more sort of detail of a bit more of your background and what sort of got you into creating the chatbots in the first place and how that led into Virtual Humans Beyond.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think like a lot of people, I grew up on sci-fi and the idea that you could talk to computers, and so I learned programming relatively early on. Whilst I was doing my degree, it was only barely off mainframes at that point. But when the internet, or particularly the World Wide Web, came out in the sort of the mid-90s, and you suddenly had this thing called JavaScript. So all of a sudden you could start to write programs and anybody in the world could then access those programs. That to me suddenly made writing programs interesting. And one of the first programs I wrote was a very, very simple chatbot. And I then discovered there also at the same time, there's a real growth in virtual worlds. So this is before Second Life. This is 1997, 98, that sort of time. And there's a world called Active Worlds where 3D avatars moving around in 3D space. But they had a web interface set up so you could actually connect the avatar inside that virtual world to the JavaScript application I'd written on the web. So I could actually be inside a virtual world as an avatar myself, talking to another avatar that was completely computer controlled, play games, have conversations, do stuff sort of in the world. So all of a sudden, within a space of 3 or 4 years, you'd gone from being very difficult to do any of this lot to all of a sudden you could start to actually have quite meaningful chatbots doing interesting stuff. Then around about 2004, I set up my own company, Dayden, and really to capitalize on those two technologies. I could see that chatbots were going places. I could see that virtual worlds were going places. And then Quas, you spent about the next 20 years at Dayton doing probably over 100 projects with those two technologies for a whole variety of clients, mainly from the public sector, but also increasingly sort of into the defence side of what's going on in UK government. Working with moving beyond JavaScript to using things like AI/ML, artificial intelligence markup language, was one of the big bits of software around at the time for doing bots. Then moving on to something called ChatScript, which itself had been originally developed for a virtual world for Sony, but Sony Home didn't take off. So instead, the guy spun out ChatScript as a separate application. That was a really good tool for developing rules-based bots. And then around about 2010, something like that, we sort of got the call from MOD to say, you guys are doing some interesting stuff around chatbot technologies. We've got a whole bunch of projects coming up in that space. Are you interested in taking part? And that then led to a lot of interesting work with MOD and to that virtual humans book you were talking about earlier on, Dan.
Yeah, amazing. And so then obviously it sounds like a small leap, but it's quite a big leap going from computer controlled chatbots to theorizing what would go into an entire virtual human, right? And we have this difficulty with Sensay as well, as you well know. What I guess are some of the most important parts of that sort of step up from just a generic chatbot to a seemingly simulated human being that are still one of the biggest challenges today, let alone 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think there's quite a number of them. I mean, the ones that I've sort of personally sort of done stuff around, I think the first one is around emotions and empathy. And when you can create a bot that appears to showing emotions is probably easier than showing empathy. But that really sort of changes the nature of the interaction you're having. Everything seems far more natural. So for instance, one of the bots we had inside of the Second Life virtual world is we did a project with the University of Wolverhampton on building effectively an emotions architecture for the bot. So it was designed to behave in the similar sort of way that humans behave, in terms of when they see things they like, they want to see more of it. When they see things they don't like, they don't want to see more of it. But also you get this idea of habituation, where you see something and you react very strongly to it initially, but then there's one of them, 10 of them, 100 of them, 1,000 of them, all of a sudden you're far less interested. So trying to create that very natural change in response, depending on what the stimuli are within the environment. And then we did a project with MOD looking in terms of the empathy side of it, just being able to read things like stress levels, so that when you're talking to the bot can read stress levels and then can moderate its response accordingly. Again, that led to a far more human type of conversation. One of the biggest difficulties with bots at the moment is we still tend to see them, although it's changing a little bit with large language models, as sort of question and answer type systems. Whereas most human conversation isn't question and answer based. It's what we're having now, which is you asked me a question a few minutes ago, I'm still talking, you're nodding when I'm saying interesting things, and you might interject at some point to try and sort of steer me back onto topic. That's the far more sort of how a human conversation typically works. And there's always been a problem with chatbots, what we call the discovery problem, which is where you don't know what it is the bot knows. And how do you make that information available? And one of the best ways of doing it is you just start talking to the bot in the area that you're interested in and then see where the conversation goes. And so we did that on one of our projects for MOD. And the way we're able to do that was using what are called knowledge graphs. And basically the bot just sort of navigates and traverses that knowledge graph without you saying it. After you've asked it one question, it will sit there traversing that knowledge graph till kingdom come. And you can set parameters that define sort of how quickly it moves around that graph, which actually creates different sorts of personalities in the bot themselves. So, there's many other areas, but those are the two of them that for me sort of jump straight to mind.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you know, I've been working on a sort of an AI brain map for Sensay as a whole, and it just reminded me I completely forgot to add knowledge graphs onto that as well. So I just made a quick note there. But when it comes to even things like emotions, empathy, you're right, is a lot more difficult. But some of those more nuanced things like emotions, how much do you think pattern recognition will come into this? Like because a lot of like our interactions can be quite predictable with sufficient amount of data. We do often talk in the same way. We go over the same stories. Typically, we have a lot of similar conversations with different people, or even with the same people from time to time. How much do you think we actually, would we actually even need to actually create some kind of, I guess, virtual emotions, as opposed to just, pattern recognition and, understanding that every so often someone, is occasionally a bit more sad, or, is a bit more tired, or sometimes they write fuller messages and sometimes they write shorter messages. For me, I think pattern recognition comes into it a lot, but it'd be great to hear, your sort of thoughts on that, and how much of humanity is just patterns.
Yeah, I think that as with a lot of this stuff, it's a combination of different things and different factors. I mean, one of the things that we did with the early bots is we built in a biorhythm model, because biorhythms, whether it's sort of based in science or not is beside the point, but it actually gives quite a nice way of modeling the variations in people's sort of emotional state over time. And so actually by introducing that into the bot, you had these sort of different cycles interacting in different ways. And that gave quite a richness, if you like, to the way in which their emotional life was being modeled. But it was very much a sort of being slapped on top of the bot. It wasn't really growing out of what the bot itself was doing. Another approach was just to make sure when we're laying down memories within the bot, is we make sure those memories are laid down with an emotional valence. So basically, what's the sort of emotion? Is it making them happy, sad, fearful, angry? And then what sort of the score out of 10 for that value, for want of a better metric. Because one of the things that tends to happen is we tend to remember the things which are quite emotionally charged when they happen to us. And we tend to forget the stuff that isn't emotionally charged. So that gives us a way of not only sort of managing memory in terms of discarding those memories that don't have a particular emotional charge, but it means if something happens that's adjacent, if you like, and conceptually or semantically to something that we've got a very strong emotional charge to, then the bot can respond accordingly to that. And so I think possibly you can use the pattern recognition side, almost sort of riding shotgun with the bot, to build up sort of what that emotional sort of network is around the semantic knowledge it's got. I think what we're trying to avoid is having to sit down and sort of hand code all this stuff. So I think the more we can actually get the bot to learn not only its own patterns, but also those patterns of other people, and begin to build, essentially it's a theory of mind. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with trying to drive these bots forward, is how do we give them a theory of mind of the person that they're, or the people that they're talking to. And linked into that, how do we get to this concept of a shared mental model? So when you're working with the bot on the problem, what you really want is your mental model of what the problem is and the bot's mental model of the problem to be totally aligned. And that's how good human teams work, is you have that alignment. So one of the projects I've been looking at over the last couple of years is understanding how we deploy shared mental models with AI in order to provide better teamwork, and that includes both the emotional elements of the team or the task, as well as the technical elements of it.
Yeah, super interesting. And that teamwork element of chatbots and AI and replicas in particular as well, whether it's with each other, with different replicas, or with humans, feedback and learning from both the humans and the other AIs and their experience, has always been something that we've been working on and trying to improve from ourselves. Because I think even just having user feedback and learning about the user in the same way that we as humans talk to different people and we learn and have sort of compartmentalized knowledge about each person we interact with. If I made 5 friends today and I hung out with each of them separately, once a week each, over the course of a year, I'd have 5 very probably distinct relationships with each of them. And in the same way, a replica and a chatbot should be able to do the same and have that kind of relationship with users, with each other, and with their creator to keep that sort of dynamic knowledge evolving and learning as it goes.
Yeah, I mean, one of the models we've always found useful is when people talk about memory, is they tend to divide memory into 3 types. There's the semantic knowledge, semantic memory, which is your knowledge about things in the world and what they mean. Then there's your episodic memory, which is the stuff that's happened to you that you've personally experienced. And then there's procedural memory, which is knowing how to do things. And so we're always quite keen to make sure we give the bots episodic memory. And basically every conversation the bot has is part of that, it builds on that episodic memory. And so just little things like the fact that each time you start talking to the bot says, oh, we haven't spoken since, for several weeks. Or hang on, we only spoke again this morning. Yeah, that adds a real sort of level of humanness, and it knows what we talked about in those last conversations, so it can ask the questions that a human would do based on those conversations you may have had 2 or 3 weeks ago. We found that was a really powerful way of building that relationship. The other thing that we did with one of the bots was, again, this will date it. This is in the days of LiveJournal, when that was sort of the blogging or the short messaging platform of choice. And we got the bot to maintain its own LiveJournal account based on all the conversations it was having and based on what it was doing in virtual worlds. And so it's all about, to me, how you start to build that sort of internal narrative in some ways for the bot. So the bot does create its own personal life, and go beyond just the interactions you have with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We've been theorizing recently about this concept of a kind of a short-term knowledge engine, which I guess would fit into the episodic memory description, where in the same way as you say just where we haven't spoken since however long, things like just picking up on the previous conversations. It was great talking to you about so and so before, or even just picking up on previous conversations. Oh, by the way, you mentioned on this before. Would you is there something else or some kind of follow-up conversation or question that you might have for that, or did you see the news about this? If it had some sort of like wider context awareness around a particular topic, as if it's been learning itself from either its creator or from other users, kind of in the same way we would.
Yeah.
But I'd love to, one of the more interesting things that you've been working on is obviously around like AI and wargaming, and using these virtual humans and chatbots for wargaming. I mean, just for everyone's sort of understanding, would you mind just give me a quick sort of description of what wargaming is?
Yeah, sure. So wargaming is really about sort of looking at a situation or a scenario, and then role playing out, what happens in that situation. And typically it's obviously been done within a military type context with sort of kinetic forces, tanks and soldiers and guns. But increasingly businesses are using it for business wargaming to look at, for instance, what's the response to trade tariffs, and what do you need to do about that? Or what's the response to new regulations, maybe around AI, development of AI. So really just working through that scenario and seeing what the consequences are of the different decisions that you would make, and also doing it in a opposed way. So you're not just talking about it and everybody nodding and say, yeah, okay, that's right, we'll go with that. But actually you've got somebody there who's trying to basically be the devil's advocate, and trying to make sure your plan doesn't work and you have to respond to that plan. So yeah, my background is ex-military, although ironically I never did any wargaming whilst I was in the military. It wasn't in favor in the 80s. But over the last 5 or 10 years, militaries across the world have started to wargame a lot more. And when I talk about wargaming, I'm not only talking about computer type wargaming, sort of first person shooters or real-time strategy type games, but done for real fighting. But I'm talking about sort of paper-based war games, even miniature-based war games. You can see in the background there, I've got a little miniatures game going. So I'm currently doing a PhD on the wargaming of urban conflict. So I'm developing a number of war games for that. But alongside that, I've also been interested in how you can use AI within a wargaming context. There's a good study done by the Turing Institute that I was a contributor to a couple of years ago. RAND Corporation has also done a project around this, and looking at the different roles that an AI can play. And here we're talking about sort of more the sort of conversational type AIs rather than the analytical ones within a war game. So one of the things you do at the beginning of a war game typically is you need to create a lot of scenario material. So that might be sort of images of people or places. It might be background biographies. It might be a sort of what we call a road to war description. Writing that can be a real pain, but obviously with something like, an LLM, you can do that almost instantly. And I've already started to use LLMs to sort of generate that sort of background material when I do games. What everybody would like to see is the ability to play against the AI. So you can basically give the AI the rules of the game and play against them as an opponent. Of course, that's actually easier with computer games because the computer AI can get access to loads of data. It can do all the pattern recognition, building and everything else like that. Whereas it's a lot harder to do with a manual game, and a lot harder to do with the very unstructured games, what are called matrix games, which tend to be used in the higher echelons of government. So looking at how you create an AI that can play those sorts of games is keeping a lot of people busy. And one of the main things I've been doing is looking at a particular form of game called a matrix game, which is really just a structured argument. And when you play it, you typically have sort of 4 or 5 people playing different roles. So maybe Zelensky, Putin, Trump, head of NATO, and you get them to play out what would happen in sort of over the next 5 or 6 weeks or 5 or 6 months. Each of them sort of proposes what they're going to do. The other players get to say, well, okay, well, you're not going to be able to do that because of X, Y, and Z. And then a decision is made as to whether or not that action is successful. So what I've been doing is I've been getting LLMs to actually do that for me. Some people have looked at, can we just have sort of one player within that game as an LLM? So if you want an extra player, you can do it that way. Some people have been looking about, can we actually get the person who's running the game to be done by the LLM? My approach, though, has just been to say, well, just get the LLM to play the entire game. Just tell it, these are your roles. This is what's going to happen. Now start playing it out turn by turn. And I've been very pleasantly surprised. And so have other people by actually just how well an LLM can do that sort of activity. What's important is bringing in potentially, a fair amount of contextual information, but sort of RAG type approaches let us do that. And certainly one of the agents I'm currently building on the Sensay platform is very much designed to play those sorts of games. And the idea is you could give almost any sort of current challenge, just give it a very human description of what it is that you're facing. And then the bot would then play through the scenario and you'd be able to look at the output and get it, tweak a few elements of it, get it to play it again, and maybe build up almost a library of possible futures. And later on I can get a link put in onto my Substack where I talk about this, and get it to build up this complete sort of or landscape effectively of what might happen in the future. So the bot will never predict what's going to happen, but it may well be that by playing multiple games, it begins to give you some idea about where the more likely sort of possible outcomes are.
Yeah, and obviously with the AI running the games, you can run multiple scenarios, hundreds if not thousands scenarios back to back, and see most likely outcomes, probabilities, and obviously, and as we've talked a lot in detail about this in the past, about how with the sort of aspect of virtual humans and replicas on top of the things like LLMs and different advanced technologies, you can really personalize it and add those different personality traits that LLMs don't necessarily have or capture specifically themselves, to I guess nuance with again up-to-date information, other scenarios that it may not be aware of, and just run through those simulations a huge amount of times, which can be extremely useful as its own kind of prediction model.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, one of the challenge in the past has always been sort of putting yourself in the enemy's shoes and trying to think about what it is that the enemy commander might do. Whereas now, I'm pretty much 100% sure that buried away in the CIA and other organizations, people are saying, well, can we build a virtual Putin? The Russians are trying to build a virtual Trump. Good luck with that. And at a more basic level, in terms of the generals commanding divisions and things like that, then to what extent from what's out there in open source material or for the military in closed source material, can you build those personalities into the bots? So that when you're actually playing against them, they're playing against, you feel like you're playing against the real person, and hopefully almost being able to second guess what they do in the future. Yeah,
which would be great. I mean, it's not like Putin holds quite a lot of his cards to his chest, I guess. But it really is a fascinating concept, and I guess that that goes a long way beyond just military strategy to business strategy, to just even in individual conversations at a day-to-day level. If you wanted to, I don't know, achieve some kind of goal, and there was, I guess, even just a certain type of person that you wanted to convince of something for a deal, or just as an introduction, or literally pretty much anything, on a much smaller scale, these models, if they were created on small individual scales, would be extremely useful to a lot of people to be able to run simulations before possibly approaching a situation, so they can learn from possible outcomes, and even things like interviews. I guess interviews would be another great one, where we're already seeing, my replica gets talked to by a lot of candidates a lot, and our head of HR, Alessandro, his replica goes through thousands of interviews every month, before they even speak to me or to Alessandro directly, because in a way they're kind of like learning about the company, they're learning about the culture, what we look for by pre-modeling that scenario with our AIs.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, just at a basic level, as a part-time academic, I'm doing the PhD. That means I'm writing papers. One of the first things that happens to those papers is they get peer reviewed. So what I've done is I've written a bot that is basically a peer review bot. So if I've written a new paper, I give it to the bot goes through it. It knows what the various criteria are that the journal is looking for. And it gives me back, pretty decent analysis of the paper, and tells me sort of where to improve things before I then actually submit it for real. When I started the PhD, I joked that when it comes to doing my Viva in about a couple of years' time, I'd be sending my virtual David along to go and do the Viva. I mean, at that time, 2.5 years ago, that sounded like that was never going to be there. But actually, the way we're going with Sensay and with the replicas, then actually I think it could do a pretty good stab at it. But again, what I might well do is create replicas of my examiners, because they're going to be people in the public domain. I can point a bot at their various source material, and I can actually try and have a virtual Viva with them, as you say, like rehearsing for a virtual interview.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really nice use case for it as well. I guess with that, we can probably, obviously we could talk for hours. We know this, but I guess for one last quick question about where, it's not really about where it's going, because I guess AI will kind of just take over anything we can do online, but the sort of different consensus on how fast things are moving, like how long do you think it is until we have indistinguishable human or virtual humans that you can interact with, that as much as you try, can't tell that it's not, whether it's a person or a bot?
I mean that's obviously the Turing test, and in some ways we're already there. It's a sliding scale. We actually ran 2 covert Turing tests about almost 10 years ago now, using what was then very primitive technology, and we passed in both cases. But the reason why we passed is we didn't let anybody else who was involved know they were taking part in the Turing test. So they were just expecting to be interacting with a person, and so they weren't they weren't on alert. And the bot used a few little tricks in order to succeed, but people didn't. In one case, nobody who talked to the bot actually said, "I've been talking to a bot." And in another case, 78% of people thought they'd been talking to a human rather than talking to a bot. And I see there was a post just in the last couple of weeks about one of the latest ChatGPT models sort of passing a more formal Turing test. So it's we're already there. It's just a question of where on that sliding scale are we for each of the years to come. And certainly, whilst you're talking about not wanting to, not trying to catch it out, then I think, and within not even a very precise domain, but within a certain level of general knowledge and particular domain knowledge, then I think, increasingly, I'll say increasingly, I don't think it's a question of when it happens, just increasingly, the bot will be able to have that conversation with you, and you will come away from that conversation not knowing if you've talked to a person or to a bot. I think the challenging areas are probably going to be around things like creativity. And so trying to get the bot to come up with new ideas, and this is coming back to the matrix gaming, I'm finding it's quite hard to get the bot to be completely original. It'll often come up with incredibly good answers, but obviously those answers are being pulled from something that's probably already out there. So trying to get the bot to be really creative in terms of what it's doing. And we've talked about the differences between just asking the bot for retrieval as against asking it for an opinion, or asking it for a recommendation, or asking it to be creative. So increasingly trying to get the bot to do those sorts of levels of cognitive function, I think are going to be interesting things to deal with.
Well, I mean, same on the real humanity side. I mean, how many people are truly creative, and how many people can just recognize patterns and see the next step or the next progression in terms of development of an idea? The truly creative people, I mean, are extremely rare. Like, people to really think outside the box, to really create something completely new. I'd say the vast majority of people's creativity is taking inspiration and learning and adapting based off of previous knowledge and some feedback. And I think that side of things already can exist in some of the AI we see. But yeah, would be an amazing step to see, AI, get to that stage of, coming up with true creativity and just, even rewriting itself, creating something completely new, whatever that may be. And yeah, I think that's definitely a limitation for now. But I also think humans are hugely limited on creativity for the most part. I have a very negative view on humanity lately. I think I've been working around computers too much. Well, look, I mean, thank you so much. Would you mind just giving any links to anyone, or just saying where people can find more information?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think hopefully on the chat they should be able to post up links to the Virtual Humans book that I showed you. I've also done a white paper which is on basic military applications of conversational AI. That's a free download, so link to that should be available. And then the other thing I've been doing, as I say, a lot of my background has been within virtual worlds, and about getting bots into virtual worlds to me is one of the most fascinating areas. So I'm actually working on a series of books on the metaverse. That one came out last year, which is an introduction to the metaverse, talking about the role of AI in that. And then the one that's about to come out in the next week, I think 1st of May, is the military metaverse. And again, what the role is of AI and conversational AI within the military metaverse. And I think there's also a link to quite a good COGEX presentation I did a couple of years ago, talking about some of our work with MOD, and more than happy for that to be posted up as well.
Putting me to shame. I need to get back to doing some writing. It's taken a bit of a back step for now. David, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and always it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, really great.
And then for the rest of the call, we've got some questions. I'm not sure if Lars is still here. Yes, fantastic.
Oh, I'm sitting and waiting. I just been thinking about the old classic movie War Games and how close are we to actually that scenario with the war gaming with AI replicas. It's just running around my mind, the whole conversation.
I mean, it really is an amazing concept, isn't it? Like you can, running different scenarios, either through wargaming, having these different group chats, or even just playing out different scenarios with world leaders, or just day to day in your life. Like even, I guess even for dating or wherever, there's some kind of ideal way that you could actually, I guess, practice or refine a strategy based off of practice scenarios or running different simulations first. I mean, the mind boggles. So yeah, I mean, Black Mirror is definitely coming to life. So let's just go a quick community update, and then we'll get on to some. Obviously, we've got quite a few good questions in here. So
yeah, I see that. The one thing I love about what is coming into the community is the current ongoing hackathon, where all the community and all the developers and everybody's actually able to join. Like you've seen Adam talk about before, Cursor is actually an amazing tool. I've been sitting and playing with it myself, breaking I don't know how many things in it and restarting. So I would never give up on joining the hackathon, because with the new tools and everything coming through, hackathon and AI working together, you can actually build amazing things, especially from a community, and everybody that doesn't know coding, they have an opportunity now to actually join.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get on to some of these community questions, just so we can get through as many as we can with the time we have. Obviously, when we have great conversations, it's hard to hard to find the time. Right.
So this is actually a big one. I'll take it over from the chat. So as LLMs become more sophisticated, there is a growing concern they might replace traditional human jobs, especially writing, education, and customer service. How do you balance advancement of LLMs with the risk of mass unemployment in these sectors?
So this came up funny enough, on a podcast I did 2 days ago around GovTech, and I think there is a saying going around that AI won't take your job, but people who use AI will take your job. And I think that's probably the most accurate, at least for the next few years. We see the whole space evolving, like in general, any kind of knowledge workers, any kind of, people who work online a lot. And, I think it'll be a lot of the sort of white collar people who go first, the the lawyers, the management consultants, the people who, you know, just have been so overpriced for so long, and suddenly AI completely undercuts their cost and the need for them. So, you know, all of a sudden, it's actually more likely to be them. There will always be need for, you know, educators. There'll always be need for certain industries where people and that human connection, that sort of in-person, you know, process is still, you know, just unfortunately, we are still, you know, essentially monkeys with shiny toys. And so we do need an element of human interaction for us to function and learn, especially in the early days. And then above and beyond that, there are plenty of jobs that, you know, will still need to be done in the age of the AI, you know, taking over a lot of the knowledge work. So I think it's just in some sectors, sure, jobs will, you know, change and be taken, and the vast majority, you know, people who leverage AI will be the ones who, you know, are people who will be getting new jobs and leveraging that knowledge and that technology to, you know, make themselves and their companies and organizations more efficient. But at the same time, a huge amount of other economies and other jobs that we can't even think about right now, because, you know, we don't know where AI is really going to take us in terms of what's the state of civilization in 10 years when AI does a lot of the work alongside robots, and how and what, you know, sort of human jobs will be needed in and around that. And there will be plenty, but we don't know exactly which industries that will be in. Some industries are more obvious than others, you know, everything from, you know, just services for like houses and stuff and fixing things and whatever else. But there's, you know, there's still plenty of job opportunities in the age of AI in the future. So it's just about reskilling, relearning, just with every kind of industrial revolution. I mean, the internet came along and it changed a lot, and it made everything a lot, you know, it changed a huge amount of things, but, you know, people still have jobs now as they always have. So it just changes the way you work. That's all.
It's always through history. Like when the car came out, the horse wagon wheels, they turned over to making car wheels instead. So everything changes, new opportunities evolve, right? So Wishling, he really wants the song. What's the new song at the start? Would love to hear the full song.
Yeah, so our stream master Kevin has redone our Sensei jingle, and I too am a big fan of the new one as well. It fits in. Unfortunately, there isn't more to it, because we actually did it so that, I think Kevin did it so that he made it into the 2-minute countdown timer specifically for this. The other song, maybe we should have like a media center somewhere where we can actually share this. If not, we'll send it to whoever wants it on Telegram to have a proper listen to it another time. But it's, you know, otherwise you can wait until next week and you'll hear it again.
I'll think about this time. We should start putting them on Spotify when we create them, because then people can actually listen to them later on, right?
A full Sensei playlist on Spotify.
Amazing jingles from Sensei.
You've said it already. I'm sure Kevin's already halfway through creating that Spotify playlist.
He loves that kind of thing, right?
All right, what's the next question?
So Film Free, have you heard about Listen Labs, and how does technologies impact your work? Well, our work.
Yeah, so Listen Labs just came up in the news yesterday, because I think they just closed a big funding round. Christ, it was either 9 million or 27 million. I can't remember. It was a big one. And Listen Labs is essentially this whole idea of customer service and understanding customer needs through essentially live conversation. It's, from what I can tell, it's probably some kind of combination of 11 Labs or some kind of voice-to-voice processing with transcriptions, using Twilio for connection to be able to phone people directly, and then running some like background AI summarization or analysis on the information that comes out, specifically around customer research. Interesting concept. I don't know. I mean, for us, it's the kind of thing we're developing a version of that ourselves for, you know, training replicas. So, you know, in terms of this like voice-to-voice conversation, it's especially for, you know, people who are too busy. The ability for, like, you know, our training bot Athena to actually phone someone up for 15-20 minutes a day or every couple of days to just interview them, ask them questions about their life, about their work, will become a really, like, you know, fun and you know, impactful way of training. So for us, we use it that way. We'll probably, you know, use something like a Listen Labs as a way of, you know, doing our customer research as well. I think it's, you know, a very, you know, interesting and scalable option for doing customer research, which I think is extremely important. So, stuff like, those kind of technologies are, it's amazing to see some of the different applications of AI and voice to voice that are coming out. So yeah, I think it's going to do very, very well.
It's always amazing with new involvements of technology coming out. It always is. So CryptoGem, when will the next demo day be? It's been a while now, hasn't it?
It has. We haven't announced it yet, but I think it's the third week of May, so it's coming out very soon. So we'll have a nice new demo day, lots of new features to show, and some exciting stuff coming up. So yeah, middle to end of May, I think I can't remember the exact date actually off the top of my head, but it's next month for sure.
Well, with everything coming, I think we're gonna have a hard time putting into one hour this time, right?
It's always a challenge.
It is. So CryptoGem again, when will the next community campaign happen next month? Like what quest segment? We are still working on what exactly we're going to do for the next quest segment, aren't we? Like we want to do something special to engage everyone. So
yeah, I can't remember if we were doing one in the run up to a demo day or if we were planning on doing one after demo day. Because I know we've got our hackathon on now, which is the big focus for sort of community and wide developer community. But we will there will be another big sort of community quest campaign in the future. I just can't remember if it's I can't remember off the top of my head whether it's coming up now or a bit later. I think, but it will be in the next few weeks. Yes, either way.
Yeah, we will give you challenges. Like always, we will give you a hard time and make sure that everything goes through and give new challenges every time.
It's a nice reminder as well, like for anyone who's new with us, if you want to get more involved with Sensay, we have our quest platform at sensay.io/quests. And this is somewhere where you can go, you can get involved, you can learn about Sensay, you can actively participate in our community objectives, helping with social media posts, helping with just different aspects of our marketing and our sort of Web3 community and just general community. And by participating, you earn points, and those points in the not too distant future will be exchangeable for swag from our store and also Sensay tokens. So you can actually earn from participating in our community. So that's just on that link there. Thanks for the question.
Exactly. Always be a part of it because you can earn a lot from it as well.
Yeah. And some people do very, very well from the community quests and the quest rewards overall.
They do, yeah. So Wishlink, why replicas of person is needed and not the organization?
Yeah, that's interesting. So there are a couple of AI companies out there that are focusing on like organizational knowledge, like Guru and Glean, and you've got like Watson's, IBM Watson, and I guess Microsoft's their Copilot type thing. So there are ones that focus on some kind of like AI tool that helps you, just navigate the company knowledge from the docs, the messages, the initiatives, the HR. Where what that doesn't capture is the real, I guess, intrinsic knowledge that the sort of tacit knowledge that someone has in their own head when they're working within a company. There's a lot of institutional, and actually, funny enough, I hope David's still here because we can bring David up because he's got a really wonderful analogy to actually help answer this question around like why have personal replicas rather than just like this generic sort of company chatbot that people can interact with.
Yeah, I'm the model that we used to use drew on two different bits of popular culture. So one way of approaching this is, for those of you who may be familiar with Philip Pullman's Dark Materials series, in that everybody sort of has this demon, which is an animal that sort of accompanies them everywhere. And basically what it's doing is it's always providing sort of the best possible advice to a situation. So if you like, corporate best practice. And the problem with that approach is that it becomes, if you like, it sort of averages out everything. So you no longer get the individual insights, you get just what is the received wisdom about a particular problem. And it's a perfectly valid way of doing it, but that's one approach. The other approach is if you go into Harry Potter, You may remember that whenever Dumbledore has a problem within Dumbledore's study, you've got all these paintings of all the previous headmasters of Hogwarts. And so what he does is he goes and has individual conversations with the relevant paintings of the headmasters or headmistresses who may be able to sort of help him with the current problem. And what he's getting there is he's getting a sort of warts and all, biases and all, but also sort of inspiration and all conversation with those individuals. So what we've always maintained is you need to sort of bear in mind that there are these two different ways of managing knowledge within an organization. And the reality is you probably need to have both of them available. And depending on really how you build your sort of Sensay replica, you can either build it to be that sort of equivalent of the oil painting in the headmaster study, and it's very much a warts and all copy of a real person or of an individual person, or you can build it to be that sort of corporate advisor, the Philip Pullman demon, that provides you with best practice, but maybe loses some of the real insight to particular challenges.
Yeah, I've been using the Harry Potter example quite a lot actually ever since I first heard it from you. I think it's a really nice way of explaining, like, you know, how this, you know, may be used in the future for, I guess, different, especially when I come on to like afterlife technology and the discussion around where this replication technology will get to, and the ability to essentially capture you for future generations. And people are like, oh, but you know, how much is someone going to talk to? And it's like, it's not necessarily about that. It's about like having it there should you want to go and, you know, ask that person something. But having that you know, the ability to go to individuals and get that individual perspective, know-how, like sort of thought process, as opposed to just their generic sort of documents, which doesn't often capture a lot of that information, becomes really powerful for any organization and individual. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. Just a little bit over time again. Go on, Lars.
So Mohammed Shoaib again. With the rise of self-improved AI models, how do you foresee companies maintaining the ethical boundaries without sacrificing the innovation speed?
I mean, David, this is probably not quite good one for you.
I mean, there was a question on this. I was at a conference in Oslo last month looking at military use of AI. And this question came up because potentially you've got the issue that, you know, certain potential adversaries have got far fewer ethical boundaries to the development of AI than we do sort of in the West. And so that may actually potentially put us at a disadvantage. The view from the panel was that actually when developers are developing AI, they tend to almost develop without guardrails on both sort of the sides of the fence, and then they only put the guardrails on afterwards. Whether or not I fully believe that, I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely a significant challenge, and looking at how different cultures are approaching it, I think is probably very important. And I don't think we do enough of looking at what's going on, particularly in China, just in the consumer use of bots. I was reviewing a paper for a journal just last week, and going into their use of sort of virtual uploaders, virtual personalities, you know, virtual influencers is way in advance of what we're seeing here. And that, of course, brings its own ethical issues with it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it to pretty much everyone I think we work with, and everyone that we, you know, in my personal life, like I've now got a kind of almost like a safe word for, like, you know, just any kind of possible message that I might send, just in case, you know, it confuses someone because they think it's me. And that advanced level of AI is just it's getting, you know, I know it's kind of slightly off topic, but that's what triggered it in my mind. But yeah, that's just the way things are going. Like, you just can't trust most things you see on the internet. I think, you know, China's definitely, you know, pretty far ahead on a lot of things in this. But I mean, maybe it's even kind of a moot point if you know, AI gets to a certain point where it does become self-advancing and self-replicating. It doesn't really matter who kind of created it, unless it is, you know, trained to do evil, which I guess is often a matter of perspective. But I don't think anyone's particularly training their AIs to self-replicate and end the world right now. Hopefully not.
No, I the chat, I think, is it alignment is the phrase I think tends to be used around this. And it's about how you build that underlying alignment with sort of human values, human ethics into the bot from the ground up. And you know, one of the problems we've got with the large language model approach is, of course, we don't really know how it's doing some of this stuff. So really the only option is to put those guardrails on around what it is that the neural networks are doing, rather than being able to embed it. But yeah, definitely an ongoing challenge.
I mean, at this point, we should just switch off all the internet and just go back to farming, farming and philosophy. And on that lovely note, we're already a bit over time. David, thank you so much for joining today.
No problem. Enjoyed it.
And for anyone joining today, thank you so much for listening in. It's been our weekly Sensay call. Please join next week with for more guests, more questions. You can find us at sensay.io, or you can find us on any social media at Ask Sensay, or you can also find me at Sensay Dan on pretty much every platform. So wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for listening, watching, and have a great week.
Have a great week, everybody. Have a good night.
Are you ready for your digital twin? Let's go back.
It's rewind time.
The birth of communication. The wonder of hearing a voice from miles away.
Hello. Just a minute, please.
Then, the IT revolution, connecting us not just by voice, but by data.
The world is at your fingertips.
The mobile revolution. We ventured into the world connected like never before. The smartphone era. More connected than ever, closer than ever, which all became a bit overwhelming. Too much information. Too many demands. Imagine if you had a helping hand. You, hundreds of you, teaching, scheduling, engaging, buying, selling, your digital AI replica. Helping you focus on what really matters. It's your revolution. The revolution of you.